Nobody warns you about the habits that ruin your life quietly. They don't crash in like disasters. They fade in slowly, until one day your future feels smaller than it should. Evan Miller was the kind of man people trusted. At 36, he had a steady job, a modest apartment outside Denver, and a reputation for being dependable. He paid his bills on time, he showed up when expected, he never caused trouble. On paper, Evan's life looked stable, even successful. But stability isn't the same as fulfillment. Every weekday morning, Evan woke at 6:30 a.m., brewed the same dark coffee, scrolled through the same headlines, and drove the same route to the same office. His job as a project coordinator wasn't terrible, it just wasn't meaningful. And that difference mattered more than he liked to admit. He told himself a familiar story. This is just how adult life works. Whenever a quiet discomfort surfaced, that subtle sense that he was wasting something precious, Evan drowned it out with distractions, streaming shows, social media, podcasts he half listened to, small rewards for surviving another day. The habit wasn't laziness, it was avoidance. Years earlier, Evan had dreamed of becoming a documentary editor. He loved stories, human psychology, and moments that changed people. In college, he stayed up late cutting footage, losing track of time. Professors noticed his talent, friends encouraged him, but after graduation, fear made his choices. Fear of instability, fear of being behind, fear of disappointing others. So Evan took the safe job, and then he took another safe choice, and another. Each time he felt the urge to change, he told himself, later. Later became his most consistent habit. Psychologically, Evan was stuck in what researchers call deferred living, the belief that real life begins after one more promotion, one more year, one more sign of certainty. But certainty never came. Instead, something else grew quietly inside him: resignation. He wasn't unhappy enough to leave and not alive enough to stay fully present. He existed in a narrow emotional middle, comfortable, numb, and increasingly disconnected from who he once believed he could become. This habit didn't look dangerous. It looked responsible. The turning point came on an ordinary Thursday. Evan was clearing old files at work when he found a forgotten folder labeled Personal, College. Inside were video projects he hadn't opened in over a decade. During lunch, curiosity pulled him in. He watched his younger self on screen. Interviews with strangers, raw footage of real moments, messy edits filled with ambition. The work wasn't perfect, but it was alive, purposeful, brave. Then he noticed the timestamp, 14 years ago. That number hit harder than any criticism ever had. Later that evening, Evan stopped by the hospital to visit his former mentor, Daniel, a retired editor who had once told him, "Don't wait too long to choose your life." Daniel was thinner now, tired, but his eyes were still sharp. They talked about small things at first: weather, work, time passing too quickly. Then Daniel asked, casually, "Are you still editing stories?" Evan hesitated. "No, not really." Daniel nodded, as if he expected that answer. "You know," Daniel said, quietly, "most people don't ruin their lives by making bad decisions. They ruin them by making no real decisions at all." The room felt suddenly heavier. Evan laughed it off, but the words followed him home. They echoed in the silence of his apartment, louder than the TV, louder than his thoughts. That night, Evan didn't sleep much. He realized something unsettling. He hadn't consciously chosen his life in years. He had been choosing comfort over growth, familiarity over purpose, later over now. And the scariest part? It had become automatic. Change didn't come instantly. In fact, the next morning, Evan almost convinced himself none of it mattered. He nearly slipped back into routine, coffee, commute, distraction. That was the habit's true power. It didn't scream, it whispered. But something had shifted. Over the following weeks, Evan noticed the cost of his avoidance everywhere. At work, he felt invisible,
not because he lacked ability, but because he no longer challenged himself. His idea stayed inside his head. His ambition had learned to stay quiet. In relationships, he struggled to connect deeply. He wasn't depressed, but he wasn't fully present either. Friends moved forward, new careers, creative risks, reinventions. Evan stayed the same. The psychological weight grew heavier. Studies show that regret from inaction often lasts longer than regret from failure. Evan was living proof. The pain wasn't sharp, it was dull, constant, and exhausting. One evening, while scrolling aimlessly, Evan stopped and asked himself a question he had been avoiding for years. If nothing changes, where will I be in 5 years? The answer terrified him. Same job, same routines, same quiet disappointment. The habit wasn't killing his present, it was killing his future. That realization forced a decision, not a dramatic leap, a deliberate one. Evan enrolled in a part-time editing course. He reached out to old contacts. He started small, unpaid projects, late nights, uncomfortable learning curves. Fear didn't disappear, but meaning returned. The most dangerous habit isn't procrastination. It's postponing your life until you feel ready. Psychologically, the brain loves certainty. It prefers predictable discomfort over uncertain growth. That's why people stay stuck, not because they can't change, but because staying feels safer than risking failure. But here's the truth few talk about. Comfort has a hidden cost. Every year you delay an honest decision, you pay with time, energy, and self-trust. You teach yourself that your dreams can wait until eventually they stop asking. Evan didn't become famous. He didn't transform overnight, but he reclaimed something more important: agency. He began choosing intentionally instead of drifting automatically. And with that came a quiet confidence, the kind that doesn't need validation. Your future doesn't collapse all at once. It shrinks slowly through habits that feel harmless, reasonable, and responsible, until one day you look back and realize the most damaging choice was not choosing at all. So here's the question worth sitting with tonight. What habit are you repeating today that your future self might quietly resent? And what would change if you stopped waiting for later? Sometimes the smallest decision is the one that saves your future.